Right now, you are probably not alone, but there is a good chance you feel like you are. And if you do, your brain is not being dramatic. It is doing something far more serious than producing a feeling. It is changing its own structure to keep you alive. Because loneliness, real loneliness, is not an emotion. It is a biological alarm system, and it has been running inside you since before your ancestors could speak. The problem is that alarm was never designed for the world you live in now, and it is going off constantly. For most of human history, being separated from your group meant one thing: you were about to die. Predators, starvation, exposure. A human alone was a human in immediate mortal danger, so your brain evolved a system to make being alone feel unbearable. Not uncomfortable. Unbearable. The same way hunger makes you eat and pain makes you pull your hand from a flame, loneliness was designed to make you crawl back to the group before the predators found you. It was one of the most important survival mechanisms our species ever developed, and it worked perfectly for 300,000 years. Then the world changed, and the alarm kept ringing. In 2015, neuroscientist John Cacioppo at the University of Chicago published findings from 2 decades of research into loneliness. What he found was not what anyone expected. He had assumed, as most researchers did, that loneliness was a consequence of poor health, that sick people became isolated, that depression caused withdrawal. The data said the opposite. Loneliness came first. The health collapse came after. Lonely people were 26% more likely to die prematurely than socially connected people. Not just unhappy, dead, years earlier than they should have been. The effect on mortality was comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and unlike smoking, nobody was putting a warning label on it. Here is what loneliness actually does inside your skull. The first thing it changes is not your mood, it is your threat detection system. Deep inside your brain sits a structure called the amygdala. It is your threat detector. It scans every situation for danger. And in lonely people, Cacioppo found it becomes hyperactive. Not occasionally, constantly. Lonely brains run a background process that never shuts off, scanning every social interaction for signs of rejection, threat, and exclusion. A stranger's neutral face reads as hostile. A friend's distraction reads as abandonment. A moment of silence in a conversation reads as contempt. The brain is not misreading the situation. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do. When you are in danger, every ambiguous signal should be treated as a threat. Better to flee a friend than miss a predator. But in a modern social life, this system destroys the very thing it is trying to protect. Because the hypervigilance that loneliness creates makes genuine connection feel dangerous, and the safer you keep yourself, the more alone you become. Cacioppo called it the loneliness loop, and it is one of the most vicious cycles in all of human psychology. The second thing loneliness changes is your sleep. Not how long you sleep, how deeply. Lonely people experience significantly more micro-awakenings during the night, brief moments where the brain surfaces toward consciousness and scans for threats before going back under. This made perfect sense on the savannah. A human sleeping alone needed to wake more often to check for predators. A human surrounded by the group could sleep more deeply because others were watching. Your brain still runs that calculation every single night. Even in your locked apartment on the 14th floor, your brain checks whether the group is nearby before it lets you go fully under. The result is that lonely people wake up exhausted from sleep that looks normal on paper. 8 hours of broken rest that never reaches the deep restorative stages the brain needs to repair itself. And a brain that cannot repair itself at night deteriorates faster during the day. The third change is the one that kills you. Loneliness rewires your immune system at the genetic level. Cacioppo and his colleagues found that in lonely people, the genes controlling inflammation were significantly upregulated. The body produces more inflammatory proteins as if it is constantly preparing to heal wounds. Again, this is ancient logic. A human separated from the group was likely to be attacked. It made biological sense to have your wound response system primed and ready. But chronic inflammation is not protection. Chronic inflammation is destruction. It is linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and multiple forms of cancer. Your body, trying to protect you from wounds that never come, slowly attacks itself instead. The alarm that was built to save your life runs so long without shutting off that it begins to consume it. In 2018, the United Kingdom appointed the world's first minister for loneliness. They did it because a government commission had found that 9 million people in the UK, nearly 1 in 7, reported feeling always or often lonely. In the United States, a 2023 Surgeon General report declared loneliness a public health epidemic. Roughly half of American adults reported measurable levels of loneliness. Not sad, not introverted. Lonely in the clinical sense, running the alarm system at a level that was changing their bodies. And the group hit hardest was not the elderly, as most people assumed. It was people between 18 and 25. The most connected generation in human history by every measurable metric was also the loneliest. This is the part that should stop you cold, because we built something in the last 20 years that looks exactly like social connection. It produces the same signals: likes, comments, followers, notifications. But the brain knows the difference. Real social connection requires risk. It requires the possibility of rejection. It requires showing someone something true about yourself and not knowing how they will respond. Online connection, as it is currently designed, removes almost all of that risk. You can curate what you show. You can delete what you regret. You can log off the moment it gets uncomfortable. And so the brain, running its ancient calculation, looks at the number of followers and the stream of notifications and concludes that something is missing. Because something is. The campfire is still what it has always been. Another human, close enough to see, willing to sit with you in the dark. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and cannot get back to sleep, and your brain starts cataloging every social failure and missed connection and moment where you said the wrong thing, understand what is actually happening. That is not anxiety. That is not weakness. That is 300,000 years of evolution doing exactly what it was built to do. Your brain is scanning for the group, checking whether you are safe, running the same threat assessment your ancestors ran in the dark outside a dying fire. The alarm was never the problem. The alarm saved your species for 300 millennia. The problem is the world changed and left the alarm with nothing real to detect. And we are all lying awake in the dark wondering why we cannot shut it off.